Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to On Cash Flow, where I help you become a master of your own cash flow. Now let's get started. When we're talking about asset allocation for financial independence and for early retirement, what I'm going to be referring to in this video is the difference between how you're allocated between stocks and bonds. This is what we're most commonly talking about when we're referring to asset allocation for early retirement or for retirement in general. So as a general rule, if you're going to be retiring early, you're probably going to need to have more stocks versus bonds than someone who is retiring during a traditional age. And that means the longer your time horizon in retirement, the more likely you're going to need to have a higher asset allocation that is in stocks versus an allocation that is in bonds. So if you're retiring in your 30s, you might have a 50, 60 year retirement time period, and you're probably going to have a lot more stocks than someone that is going to be retiring, let's say in their 60s, that might have a 20 to 30 year retirement period. Stocks, at least in the long run, have produced much higher returns over the long run than bonds have. However, it does come at a little bit of cost here because nothing in this world is free, and that means that you're going to probably have a lot more volatility when it comes to your portfolio if you have a higher allocation in stocks. This is something that you might have to accept if you're going to retire early. And we're going to run through some scenarios here that is just going to illustrate that, the difference between how much stocks you have versus how much bonds you have, and how it's going to possibly affect your early retirement. So I have three scenarios here that I'm going to run by you, and they're all going to be just basically different portfolios. However, all of these three scenarios are going to have some things in common. They all are going to assume a 50-year retirement. They all are going to assume that you have an initial withdrawal rate of 4% of the starting portfolio value. Okay, so if you start with $1 million, your initial withdrawal rate is $40,000, which is 4% per year. All of these scenarios are going to adjust upwards for inflation based on what the CPI is, the Consumer Price Index. So if the CPI goes up by 5%, the withdrawals are going to go up by 5% based on the initial starting withdrawal. All of these portfolios are also going to assume that no Social Security is going to be ever given out. So it's only going to be relying on the portfolio itself and assumes $0 in Social Security. And lastly, the fees for all of these portfolios are going to be assumed to be an average of 0.05%, which is not that crazy because all of these portfolios are going to be investing in index funds, which is going to allow them to get such low amounts of fees for their investments. So here are the three different scenarios, and they are just three different asset allocations and how they would have done based on historical data of the underlying assets. So the first scenario is going to be 100% stocks and 0% bonds. The second scenario is going to be 80% stocks and 20% bonds. And the third scenario is going to be the classic 60% stocks and 40% bonds. How would these do over that 50-year time period that we mentioned before? Scenario number one, the 100% stock portfolio yielded a 91% success rate over that 50-year time period. So in 91% of time periods based on historical data, the 100% stock portfolio did succeed in not running out of money. Scenario number two, the 80-20 split, that had a 85% chance of success. So in 85% of these scenarios, the portfolio did not run out of money. Now in scenario number three, the 60-40 split, it had a 71% chance of success over a 50-year period. So as you can see, the more stocks you have, the longer of a time period you have, the more likely they are going to outperform a more conservative portfolio, at least based on historical data. And just for fun here, the portfolios with more stocks also ended up on average having a lot more money left over than the portfolios with more bonds. So there are some key takeaways here that we need to know if we're talking about how our asset allocation should be structured in early financial independence. But before we move on to that, there is something else that you do need to keep in mind if you are looking to become financially independent. And the thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to like this video if you're liking it so far. Please make sure you like the video, give it a thumbs up if you're enjoying it so far. It really does help me out and I really do appreciate it. But let's get back into it. Let's get back to those key takeaways. Key takeaway number one is very obvious, but I have to mention it. Your asset allocation is super important when it comes to early financial independence. And that's because you're dealing with a much longer time horizon. So your asset allocation, you can't get it as wrong as someone with a very short time horizon. You're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive, most likely. And then as a general rule, what it seems to be, the earlier you're going to become financially independent, the more stocks that you're probably going to have in your portfolio. The older you retire, the less likely you're going to need a higher percentage of stocks. The younger you become financially independent, the lower your initial withdrawal rate should be if you want your portfolio to last or even if you want it to grow. The later you retire, the higher of an initial withdrawal rate that you can have. Okay, all of this sounds pretty obvious, right? But I think it's better to put the numbers to the concepts here. Let's run the same scenarios through F.I.R.E Sim, a financial independence calculator, but let's do it with a starting withdrawal rate of 3.5% instead of 4%. This is what a lot of people want to do if they're looking to retire, exceptionally early, like in their late late 20s or early 30s or even like late 30s. So in this case, if we're doing just 0.5% less of our initial starting balance of 3.5%, how do those original scenarios play out now? Well, now with the 100% stock portfolio, there is a 96% chance of success. With the 80-20 split portfolio, the success rate is also 96%. And then with the 60-40 split, the success rate becomes 92%. So all of these scenarios, starting with a 3.5% withdrawal rate, have a success rate that is in the 90s. So a pretty darn high chance of success based on historical data. And I think this just best illustrates that if you're looking to retire early, if you're looking for early financial independence, you're probably going to have to be a little bit more aggressive with your portfolio, meaning you're probably going to need more equities versus bonds, and you're probably going to need to have a lower initial withdrawal rate than 4%, especially if you want high chance of success over a long time period such as 50 years. Now, I want to know from you in the comments below, what do you plan on having your asset allocation when you plan on retiring? If you plan on retiring early, if you plan on becoming financially independent, what do you plan on having your asset allocation be between stocks and bonds? I'm really curious to know what you have yours at. Right now, I have mine at 100% stocks. Okay, so I'm looking for that maximum growth over time. But I'm also kind of earning a little bit more extra income on the side, so my withdrawal rates are lower because I'm making a little bit of extra money here on YouTube. Not much, but just a little bit. And then after you're done leaving that comment, I do want you to check out a resource that I have been using. I have pretty much put all of my investments into M1 Finance, and there's a very good reason for it. It helps me automate everything that I do in my investments, and I really love the user interface. So if you haven't checked out their platform already, you should definitely check it out, because within M1 Finance, you can create what's known as pies, and that's basically your asset allocation. And it's really cool how they have the visual diagrams of the pies on there for you, so you can monitor your asset allocation. So luckily for me, my asset allocation is very simple. So I have an 80-20 split between total US stock and total international stock. So my pie is very, very simple. But some people like to have a little bit more complicated with their asset allocation, and M1 Finance lets you manage that super easy, okay? So check out M1 Finance, go to oncashflow.com/resources, just click through there, read up on them and see what they're all about. I really like their platform. I have, like I said, I've transferred pretty much all of my money over to that platform, and that's now where I manage all my investments. It might be right for you as well. So click through there. They're always having bonuses. So if you do sign up for an account and you deposit a certain amount, you might actually get an extra little bonus out of there. And of course, if you do sign up for the account, I might get a little bit of extra bonus as well. So I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from oncashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.